Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar with Christian, Vasu, and Orlin. In this webinar, you will learn about NeoNephos as one of the first concrete open source outcomes of Europe's accelerating investments and strategic digital capabilities. You will hear why and how NeoNephos contributes to open collaboration on cloud and edge infrastructure that can be adopted and extended across Europe. So our speakers are, as I mentioned, Christian Hüning, and he is an executive product manager at BWI and responsible for the private cloud platform. He is passionate about cloud native technologies and solving architectural challenges. Now with BWI joining NeoNephos, Christian is now also in the governing board of this foundation and representing BWI. Then we have my colleague Orlin Vasilev. He's located in Sofia and is an open source and cloud native technology advocate at SAP. He's also a community manager for Project Harbor and Project K3S, and he also organizes Kubernetes community days in Sofia. At NeoNephos, he is part of the governing board as a chair and community caretaker for the foundation and projects. And last but not least, Vasu, mind me if I don't pronounce his last name correctly, Chandrasekhara? No, it's probably wrong.
Chandrasekhara.
Yeah, okay. Very difficult. He was a colleague of mine, but he's now basically an independent advisor for the NeoNephos Foundation. And during his role at SAP, he held different positions, but one was a chief architect and an advocate for SAP as a platinum sponsor of the CNCF. And he also led SAP's participation in the important project of common European interest, and helped establish the NeoNephos Foundation and did many more things. So maybe, yeah, you can add whatever you want, Vasu, and also Orlin, Christian. But with that, I would hand over to you.
Thank you, Ulrike. Let me first start with an observation around the name, digital sovereignty, because today I think digital sovereignty, it has become kind of a catch-all phrase for almost every ailment in the European digital industry. Now, mainly because I think as the Draghi report outlines in much more detail, Europe over the last decades, quote unquote, has shown immense complacency and has missed out on the technical and digital revolution. Europe has missed out building own capabilities in this field. And I think it's simply because with free trade, it was just easier to buy innovation rather than build in Europe. But the urgency now of the situation is now paramount because the paradigms of geopolitical stability and global free trade over the past decades, the main proponent for the buy rather than build, have completely faded, right? And I like to present this picture here because the root cause for Europe's lack of digital sovereignty can best be explained with this chart. Because smart players in the digital industry, they have established platform economies of scale where the winner takes it all. And the bubbles here represent market capitalization of publicly traded companies. And as you can see, Europe's ecosystem bubble is negligible. And mind you, these bubbles, I think this data is from 2024, and the more recent expansion with AI is not even reflected. So given the situation, we can ask ourselves, what can Europe do about it? Yeah, but before we submit completely to pessimism, I would like to remind us on a historic precedent. Because in the 60s, Europe faced actually a very similar situation in the aerospace industry. If we had to chart the global market stronghold with bubbles, it would probably look very similar to the one I've shown earlier. But here, the governments of France, Germany, and the UK in the 60s, they initiated the Airbus Industry Consortia. And in essence, they used public taxpayer money to build sovereign capabilities in Europe. And I would attribute, this intervention today as a success for Europe. So governments do have a number of tools at their disposal when it comes to the perceived market failure with respect to digital sovereignty. Now, these tools can be as diverse as creating regulations and policies, or even much larger, like devising a single investment union, and many more. But one more thing is that, governments and Europe can define strategies to which all the different stakeholders in Europe can align to. Now, in this session, we will only relate to 3 items, namely the state aid for research and development. That's where the NeoNephos Foundation came from. And also the very recently published EU tech sovereignty package, which includes, in my opinion, a well-balanced strategy for the uptake and promotion of open source. And with Christian here, we will also talk a bit about coordination of open source for defense. All right. So when it comes to funding research, the European Union has a policy instrument called Important Project of Common European Interest. I think Ulrike already mentioned that. This policy instrument is open to all member states. And typically, these IPCEIs, I call it IPCEI for short, they only fund ambitious research development that go beyond state of the art. Now, there are already a number of ongoing IPCEIs, for example, in the area of microelectronics, batteries, and hydrogen. And the expectation is that the outcome of public taxpayer funding must benefit, via spillover, for example, all of EU, not just the participating companies. This funding also should not distort the market, but rather help correct market failures as evident in the digital market. So, in late 2023, after many months of deliberation, an IPCEI for next generation cloud infrastructure and services was approved. IPCEI-CIS, it's called in short. Now, this also has a definite focus on strengthening digital sovereignty, as we'll see later. So typically, the funding by the state has to be matched by participating companies. At launch, this IPCEI had 1.2 billion euro in public funds, so we are not talking peanuts here. But they were also expected to unlock additional 1.4 billion euro from the private side. So remember, it's not 100% public funding, it's not free money, and it makes sense for the EU and the public to expect participating companies to have skin in the game. And in this diagram, you can see the setup of the IPCEI-CIS. Overall, it's a large project. Over 120 companies and organizations are participating. And the fact that companies must also invest with their own money is very important for the argument that I'm going to make, because it creates a paradoxon for especially this software-based IPCEI. Because in this forum, we all understand that digital sovereignty with software in today's day and age, with the required network effects of adoption, that can only be achieved with vendor-neutral standards and with open source governed by neutral foundations. Now, this IPCEI did not make open source for software mandatory. Now, I mention this because you will be able to appreciate SAP's full donation of its intellectual property to a neutral foundation even more. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Now, based on this IPCEI-CIS, further IPCEIs for AI and computer infrastructure are being deliberated as we speak, and they're going to be soon to be launched. And they will surely also need an open source infrastructure, if you will. And this I'm mentioning to stress the fact that IPCEIs are not one-off projects. They are part of Europe's long-term goals, and they are backed by political will. And you can read more about this in the strategic ApeiroRA initiative. That's the umbrella initiative under the ApeiroRA homepage. The ApeiroRA, the O is spelled with the 8. Yeah. So, but now more technical. What is to be expected as technical outcome? Now, it's a complex project. There are many focused work streams that really take too long to explain. Instead, I like to summarize the mission statement from the IPCEI as follows. It means create a multi-provider cloud edge continuum. That's a mouthful. The continuum here spans all types of physical realms, from on-premise to edge to cloud. And if we follow the NIST definition of cloud, we basically have an ecosystem of different infrastructure providers that run these physical realms. We may have an ecosystem of platform and software providers that run on top, but the goal of the continuum is that all of these digital services that make use of these various underlays can roam across these silos without being locked in. This, of course, requires interoperability and portability. That, in the nutshell, is the continuum. Yeah, and welcome to the ApeiroRA reference architecture. That is the name of SAP's IPCEI-CIS project. And let me also here explain in a nutshell what SAP opted to do technically in this project. And the background is that SAP internally already had built an internal platform that kind of resembles the requirements for the continuum from the mission statement. Yeah. So we actually already had a proof point for the continuum. And that is simply because SAP needed its enterprise software to reliably work on any type of partner cloud. So we obviously used interoperable abstractions. Now, in our case, the idea was to build a more generic cloud abstraction layer, like an operating system, but not for a single machine, but for a complete cloud. An operating system, a cloud operating system, if you will. And of course, for this IPCEI, we expanded our proof point that we already had as a solution for the continuum. But we had structural, not technical, challenges ahead of us. And I want to talk about that a bit. So imagine SAP publishes a working model for the continuum as, say, reference architecture. But its implementation would only be accessible, say, at a fair price for customers. Now ask yourself, how would that enable a pan-European ecosystem? Yeah, producing this important virtuous cycle of innovation where other companies with their use cases can adopt and then contribute freely. How would a vendor-owned product or vendor platform overcome the already existing fragmentation we see between the many players in Europe? So let me answer my rhetorical question. Of course, would not help at all, right? So therefore, we understood that to boost adoption and to develop this vibrant ecosystem, we needed to place all the projects and components of the reference architecture, the cloud operating system, under neutral governance and ownership. Now, SAP, together with like-minded companies last year, set up the NeoNephos Foundation with an European nonprofit organization, that is the Linux Foundation Europe in Brussels. And we started donating all projects under an enterprise-friendly, permissible open source license. Now, what also helped, of course, was the fact that all projects that we donated were built with a common cloud native technical team. And they were already used or will be used in the platforms of our respective companies. So not only at SAP. That's also investment safety, if you will. Now, the common theme, of course, is the de facto lingua franca and the standards around Kubernetes. This also made open sourcing and collaboration with others a no-brainer. Now, I personally want to say that this initiative by SAP to donate and open source its intellectual property is genuine, also because the project of common European interest just requires it. And our initiative, coincidentally, with the NeoNephos Foundation, aligns 100% with the EU open source strategy as published recently in the tech sovereignty package. This slide lists the main 4 goals And we can actually place a check mark against all of them. Maybe this was foresight, but essentially the NeoNephos Foundation is an outcome of the mission, because ecosystem building with software requires open source. Without neutral open source, the interests of the various players that you would like to freely participate in the ecosystem, these interests just do not converge. And yeah, and with that introduction, I would like to hand over to Orlin, who will speak about the state of NeoNephos today. But, keep in mind that, SAP, started the foundation, yeah, but it's a blank sheet of paper, yeah. SAP just has one vote in the foundation, just like everyone else. Orlin.
Yeah, thank you, Vasu. First of all, welcome everyone. And I have to make a confession. I have to step into the shoes of Vasu, because Vasu was actually the one who initiated all that. So bear with me when I practice my public speaking, and I try to cover for Vasu in the foundation. So what is NeoNephos Foundation? Vasu mentioned it a few times, and what is offer for the ecosystem. And without, it's a, of course, as a foundation, and it's like a daughter foundation of the Linux Foundation Europe. It's a neutral home for infrastructure layer that lets European cloud providers to work together. And you, as a consumer of these local champions or local hyperscalers in Europe, you're not locked in to one, but you can run your workloads regardless of the lock-in, so you can choose and move. So why NeoNephos was created? Vasu actually answered that question already, but as of now, European institutions and companies are running on proprietary non-European infrastructure. And it's hard to gain control or do audits, and as I said, to be portable between different vendors. So the need was obvious that we have to have a shared neutral home for in terms of foundation, not just another product or another vendor, but something together, all the brightest of the European companies to work together towards a brighter future in that area. And to do that, NeoNephos came up. And what is NeoNephos? In essence, like the technical terms, like not the ideological or the goals, but the actual thing. It's a foundation, natural foundation, hosting currently 13 projects. We're going to take a look at them a little bit later. It's a direct fund under the Linux Foundation Europe. And direct fund, it's, as you can see, it's a little bit different written there, because it differentiates how the foundation works. It's a daughter foundation of the Linux Foundation Europe, but operates independently. That means we have a governing board, which is built up from all the members of the foundation. We have our own funds, and we manage our own funds on our own. Of course, we are in some way dependent of the Linux Foundation as the umbrella foundation, but we operate independently. Aligned totally with the EU digital sovereignty priorities, and by chance in quotes, aligns totally and addressing the EU tech sovereign package, which was released last month. And I see, I'm not sure if you managed to follow up what Vasu said, but somehow the team and Vasu kind of foreseen what will come up in the next year or two about what Europe will be needing, and somehow, again in quotes, magically, the NeoNephos completely addresses all that, and all the effort that we do there is going to answer all these questions that the European Commission added on the tech sovereign requirements. So that's in very nutshell what's the technical state of the foundation is. A little quick timeline. 2023, the IPCEI-CIS launches and gives that opportunity entities to join to get the funds and work actually on these open source projects. And the result of that, some projects like Gartner Iron Core and Platform Mesh emerged, and there were people who say, yeah, but initially SAP, for example, worked on them because they needed. Yes, that's true, but that doesn't change the fact that then all that intellectual property was publicly published on the foundation and donated for everyone else to use it. And actually, at the time when that was done, some of the other founding members, like we see in Stackit, they already contribute to that. They're already using part of this stuff. So it wasn't like we do something internally, talking about SAP right now, and then we just, because we got the funding, we publish it. That's I got that question so many times on KubeCon and some other conferences, so I think we have to clear this out. So back to the timeline. 2025, Vasu was on stage on KubeCon London, and he did the opening talk about the foundation and what we're going to achieve, how we're going to achieve it, what's the mindset. At the time, we had around 15 members, and currently we have 13 projects, as I said. We have more than around 20 members now, because few are in the pipeline to get onboarded, so I'm not sure how to count that. And we recently enabled our ambassador program, so we have our 2 ambassadors. I'm going to talk that a little bit later in the outreach stuff. So our project, 13 projects right now, a few more to come in. They're in the pipeline. I don't want to spend a half an hour talking about a lot of them and to go one by one. I just want to point out a few that you can test out and to play around, and some that makes the NeoNephos unique in what we offer as a foundation compared to, because always people compare NeoNephos to the CNCF. We're going to talk about that a little bit later as well, why and CNCF and what's the difference. But for example, Platform Mesh is a federated platform that connects you and orchestrates services across multiple clouds and edge environments. Gartner, of course, is the most known and most established project within the foundation. It's a Kubernetes management platform, similar to others, just the scale that Gartner can solve, it's much different than others competitors. Iron Core is something that a lot of folks are interested in. There's no direct equivalent of this one, in my opinion, for example, in the CNCF landscape, that low-level compute management, networking, storage on the bare metal level. Cobalt Core, it's a cloud-native platform for provisioning and managing bare metal for in terms of like resources in Kubernetes. And I just want to close up with the greenhouse and to make a reference to our community calls. Yesterday we had our we had our community foundation community call, and we had a great presentation about greenhouse. So if you're interested, yeah, I'll show you how to join those. And there are many more. We have the Garden Linux, Catalyst, Luigi, and yeah, you can navigate to the NeoNephos website and to check them out. Some of those are like Gartner or Platform Mesh you can run super easy. Some others require a little bit of availability of hardware to run that, like the Iron Core, for example. But side note to this one, the foundation works on environment, like a playground environment, where you can test all that. So before you go to your CTOs, or if you're the CTO, you can play around with that and take the informed decision. Is that going to work for us or not? And just to close the loop and provide feedback even to the foundation side. So what NeoNephos offers in terms of foundation towards more on the project side. As a foundation, of course, we have a bunch of folks like me included behind the curtains that we do stuff for the project. So we have set of services for each project, like mail services, Zulip, whatever. That list grows with the time. Keep in mind that NeoNephos, compared to some other foundations, I'm going to compare again with the CNCF, because I've been in CNCF for more than 10 years. 10 years, CNCF has that well-established services for projects. We're building the same equivalent of services, depends on the demand that the project needs and have. So if you see that services are too small right now, just give a shout what you need, and we can try to provide that. We have an outreach committee, which is something unique, I think, for foundations especially. The outreach committee, it's a group of people that their job is actually to reach out to the broader community and to propagate and preach and evangelize the whole idea, right? And it's a very good entry point. If you want to join the effort, you can join the outreach committee and just be vocal, be social. We have the ambassador program. One thing that differentiates NeoNephos from other foundations, we have independent European governance, which means right now all the decisions are made in Europe, by Europe, for Europeans in very, very short term. We provide the guidance for the projects, so project government guidelines and structure. So whenever you want to have a project and you want to join the foundation, you want to donate that project, we can give you all that ready to use community structure, repository structure, how you can set up your TSC, how to talk with the TSC, stands for Technical Steering Committee, how you want to talk to the Technical Advisory Council. So you need some technical decisions to be made, which way the project should go. You can always go to the leads on the foundation and talk with them. Yeah, as I said, we have the Technology Advisory Council, and of course, as a daughter foundation, direct fund from the Linux Foundation Europe, we have exposure to pretty much every tooling and services that the Linux Foundation provides. So if you're missing something from our sub-tools and services, we can always address that to the Linux Foundation and we can work it out. What NeoNephos is not, that's a very important topic to cover as well. It's not a CNCF replacement. I want to be completely clear about that. It's not a CNCF replacement. Actually, we want to complement CNCF, because the idea in NeoNephos is not to have every single project out there possible to do anything, right? We want to have a strict set of projects that do specific stuff to build that stack that gives you that freedom, and everything else you can just leverage from CNCF and work with them. As I'm the pure proof that works. I'm working with CNCF for the last 10 years and I joined NeoNephos. So that interconnectivity and cross work just happens, right? So another thing, NeoNephos is not a product, right? It's a stack, it's an idea, it's a management, it's a governance. So do not expect to just go and do the quick start and get that product running. It's not intended to be this way, right? It's not geographically restricted, even though we talk about European Union. It's not only European, right? There are companies across the globe who are interested in what we do, and they want to contribute and they want to join. So it's not restricted to European, but the mindset is towards European institutions and companies. It's not a research project. I heard that as well. Like, oh, you guys are just playing there, trying to figure out this one. No, it's not. It's actually working in production, heavy scale. So it's not just a research project. And overlaps a little bit. It's not a complete solution. Why it's not a complete solution? Because that evolves every single day. The project comes in, they archive or they develop different features that are controversial, or it's not set in stone. So it's not something that now it is and that's it. It's a continuous work with all the members and all the folks that are contributing their time and their effort. So how to engage? That's my field, right? So there's two ways to engage with the foundation. The easy way in is if you're not a member, right? You're just someone who just by accident joined that call. What you can take away from this one, use the projects, right? That's the easiest thing to do. Test them out, provide some feedback. They're all on GitHub, all available. Just play around and see how it goes, right? If you feel advantageous enough and you feel ready, contribute code, contribute to the docs. The other way, join our communities. We have plethora of ways to communicate with us. Most of us, we're of course living in the CNCF and Kubernetes Slack space, and you name it. We have Zulip. I'm not sure how many of you have been using Zulip because it's kind of in the background. Yeah, Vasu, yeah, we're using Zulip every day. But Zulip is it's a European service that supports and also it's a Linux Foundation heavily used to communicate across projects. And the other way is apply for ambassador. If you think that what we do, it's worth joining and it's worth evangelizing about it, and apply for ambassador. Show us what you can do. Show us your passion of contributing in the terms of educating others, representing the projects, representing the foundation. Yeah, and I hope I can see you some of these talks. The other way to participate, if you're a C-level or you have regular coffee with the C-level, you can go and talk to them how to become a member, because the member can have a different meanings, right? We have our premier sponsor level, which is the higher tier. Then we have the general sponsor and associates. So the premier have a seat in the chair on the governing board. The general sponsors are represented and they have tax observability and shared governing board representative. Associates is more like on the academic research area where no profits and universities are getting in, and they want to contribute and have their foot in the door to actually enable their entities, or they have great ideas how to do that better. And something unique for the foundation, I think, we have that government advisory committee, because what we do, it's on the verge of being right. It's technological and we solve technical problems, but that overlaps a lot with the policy and the government affairs. So we have that GAC thing that if you're a representative of the government, you can join and feed us with your needs, your information, what you need your organization to run and to become more independent and sovereign in terms of the IT. So if you're a part of these kind of organizations, please feel free to reach to us, any of us. We can guide you through the process to get in. And call for action. One thing that from my side, I really want to leave you off is to join us, right? So you can learn from the NeoNephos Foundation website, our goals, our meetups, everything. If you have a question, you can address it to the formation. Join our mailing lists. We have you can find that under the services on the foundation site. And we have a calendar with our community meetings. It's a long URL, but I was not able to shorten it to make it proper. But soon you can find it on the website, and to navigate to our meetings. With that, I'm going to give the I'm going to cover that one. Just a brief overview of the adoption and the vibrant ecosystem that we have. As you can see, we have almost 20 members. Actually, one member is missing here, the Giant Swarm, who joined the other day. I don't know how we left out that. I'm sorry, folks from Giant Swarm.
It's in the lower corner.
Is it?
It was there. Yeah.
Oh, it was okay. Sorry. Yesterday it was up there. It was in the upper right. So I was like, oh, okay. So you can see the variety of companies that are in the foundation now, and their niche business is different, but we all share the whole the mindset to work towards the European sovereign solutions. And with that, I want to hand over back to Vasu to talk about something super interesting as a term. Thank you.
Yeah. So, all this is good. Foundations are well known. Many people know this, but I want to talk about something. Whenever you hear about these, we also hear the term digital commons. Now, digital commons here represents the vendor-neutral commons of open source, owned by everyone. In this case, a foundation. Now, in effect, what NeoNephos is building on top of the shoulders of Giant, as mentioned, on top of Linux, on top of Kubernetes, and many more, is an operationally viable reference stack that can be shared amongst any adopter. Now, any company that wants to build a business on a digital sovereign continuum that is across multi-providers, they will require intrinsic interoperability and portability. And for Europe, the digital commons that we mention here is a strategic path towards digital sovereignty. Today, while most of our industry uses the exact same upstream open source, like OpenStack, like Kubernetes, and so on, they still don't produce a form of interoperability that is 100% API compatible. Now, the lack of an operationally viable digital commons stack is, in our opinion, the main reason the open source landscape is fragmented. The tragedy of a commons, if you know about that term. Now, I depicted the digital commons as a triangle because it needs to balance these three key corner points. And to expect altruism from every participant, that's just not sustainable. That may be only valid until public funding is available. Now with NeoNephos, the aim is that the projects in the digital commons must provide participants and adopters with a means to earn money. And while we do need innovation and with differentiation, because otherwise it's just going to converge towards a least common denominator, the conformance standard must ensure that differentiation by one does not break the interoperability requirements for all in the continuum. Now, this may sound like squaring the circle, but the example set forth in an operational stack for production, one that is, by the way, also AI ready, one that can be adopted and shared without any lock-in side effects, that is our strategic path forward. And we're going to make it concrete because Christian will now explain how the Open Defense Cloud fits into this triangle. So over to you, Christian.
Thank you, Vasu. So let me take over here. Okay, that worked. So yeah, we're going to look at our little effort in terms of how we are going to use this ecosystem and engage with it, or how we are already doing that. So we, that is BWI being the IT service supplier for the German armed forces, namely the Bundeswehr. Now, where do we come from? Why is it interesting for us to invest in cloud technology at all? There has been a strategic shift recently to prioritizing software and digitalization all over embedded hardware solutions that you add to wherever you need to go in order to fulfill your mission. And this entire endeavor is called software-defined defense. And what that translates to very concretely is that the armed forces are concerned with, they want to get their solutions, their software working, they want it to be updated frequently because that's where innovation happens these days. We've seen that in Ukraine a lot. There's a lot of stuff happening here. So you need to have the capability to run software across the entire cloud continuum from core, which is data centers, over fog. Yeah, we still have that, all the way to the edge. And while we can't really ourselves work on the software related here, what we can provide with our cloud solutions is the standardization underneath it on the platform level. And that is exactly where it ties in with what Vasu pointed out, that we need to have this standardized platform layer. And of course, the question now is, where do we get this platform technology from? Do we buy this from market leaders? Do we buy this from market leaders, not from Europe, potentially? Well, it came down to this equation when we thought about it. Sovereignty, everybody talks about sovereignty, but we thought about what does it actually mean for us? So to us, it's a function of ecosystems and interoperability, because ultimately, we don't want to base this very important piece of technology for us, this very important standardized platform for us, on singular players, no matter where they come from, actually. But rather, we want to base this on a vibrant ecosystem, on a diverse ecosystem that is inviting market player, that is rooted in foundations and institutions that are governed by a variety of people from a diverse background, ideally. And NeoNephos to us is exactly that. It's been so great that both the technology has been built through IPCEI and then also been entirely donated into this ecosystem because it really fit perfectly into what we were looking for. And now it's on us to ensure that the interoperability is there. And I think using neutral open source projects that are being worked on, that can be discussed in their own realm, or there can also be competing open source projects, but again, variety is a good thing here, is exactly the way to go forward. Now, that is exactly why last year, we as BWI decided that it would be time to join this effort. So taking effect at the beginning of this year, that is why BWI joined the NeoNephos Foundation as a premier member and sponsor. And in doing so, we also expanded our cloud strategy. So far, the cloud strategy of the Bundeswehr had been laid out as a multi-cloud strategy, a second vendor, a third vendor strategy, to not only rely on the singular partner. So far, the private cloud of the Bundeswehr has been built based on VMware as a platform. That's what's running. Now, there was news about this GDCA implementation. It was widely discussed. It's this air-gapped but entirely operated by us solution that is the second stack. Last year, it has been decided that the strategic target platform for the cloud operations is set to be the Open Defense Cloud on the entire landscape from core, fog to edge. And that is supposed to be based entirely on NeoNephos and CNCF technology. So the idea around this is that we will now open up the space, that we will facilitate, or actually are already facilitating, the technology open sourced in NeoNephos. And of course, on top of that, there's a lot of stuff from the CNCF, all those well-known projects that Orlin also talked about, that we will use for that. But the Open Defense Cloud is not only a technology platform, but it's also an option to now expand the ecosystem, to broaden the amount of companies and software suppliers, edge vendors, cloud vendors that can take part in that can help us to build these bits and pieces, to add features, to contribute to the space. This is an effort that we will open up, or already opened up, to allies and partners in the larger NATO ecosystem as well. And of course, with a strong focus on Europe. On the more technical side, we see that the ecosystem that NeoNephos created is very helpful for us, because what we need is especially this IIS layer stack with Iron Core as a project, helping us to really deliver, again, a standardized Kubernetes resource model first approach to managing our entire infrastructure. This is a new approach over more imperative approaches that really suits our need for full automation in the same way across the entire stack. We use Gardener and Garden Linux also as solutions that are really great in terms of managing thousands of Kubernetes clusters. And this is entirely a sovereign solution that essentially comes from Europe, originating from SAP, now in NeoNephos. And of course, Kubernetes. We are now using Platform Mesh to orchestrate a variety of providers in our Open Defense Cloud stack, and opening up the stack so that others can also provide their services into that ecosystem. And then there's also other projects that we created ourselves that are also already fully open source, like Solar and Arc, that are not yet part of the NeoNephos ecosystem, but that might become part of it if it works, if it fits in. There's other things like OSTP, which is our solution to bootstrap infrastructure out of nowhere in a fully air-gapped scenario. So if that is interesting, we would also like to open source that. And there's, of course, a lot of contributions across the projects, especially in items like OCM, the Open Component Model, Platform Mesh, as I said, Iron Core now. So all of this is happening. And yeah, I just like to express my sincere thanks to all of the people involved with these efforts, because when without that, it wouldn't have been possible to get this project alive. And I think it's a very important step towards a more European grounded and sovereign goal. And I think together we really see that we can create great technology and that we should really pursue this in the way that we do it at the moment and right now. And with that, I would like to hand it over again to Vasu, I think, for the roadmap items.
Yeah, exactly. I was requested to represent a few items from the NeoNephos roadmap. So first of all, this roadmap is discussed in the governing board. It's amongst all the members of NeoNephos, right? And it's publicly readable. It's very transparent. Go to NeoNephos under blog and you can read up on it. I want to just highlight a couple of things, right? So first of all, you know, we are actually doing quite nice projects and we are doing things for the continuum, but we are not yet talking about it as much, right? So therefore, there's an emphasis of publicizing case studies, success stories, and so on, because some of our members, so if I look at the large ones like SAP, of course, Deutsche Telekom, Stackit, and so on, they are using our projects in production. These are production-grade projects to a certain extent. And we need to make a little bit more, make it more vocal, say this is how we use it, how other components come in like platform mesh, OCM, and so on. You heard about it. That's number one. And then on the developer side, we are going to host and finance co-located events at the KubeCon, for example. We're going to do particularly hackathons. There are a couple of ones already planned, right? And to gather more momentum. And remember, this is a young foundation. We're just getting started here, right? And one of the things, I think Orlin already alluded to that, you know, there are some foundations which particularly focus on infrastructure, like the Open Infra. All the members there already have data centers, physical infrastructure in place, and they can basically participate and collaborate because they already have the blocks to do what is needed. But in our case, there are a couple of members which are higher upon the stack. And while you know the large companies, SAP, Telecom, BWI, and so on, they have the money to expand physical data centers and test it out and so on. Some of the members do not. And so therefore, we want to create a NeoNephos test lab. And I just placed some ideas from our discussions here, how we're going to build it out. It's not going to be huge, but we're going to co-locate it in a neutral co-working space and give our members access for tests and demonstration. And that brings me to the next slide. I just, you know, I wanted to inject it here because it shows you that it's just by coincidence I found from the German Federal Ministry of Digital Transformation and Government Modernization, BMDS in short, they have a project called Spark. Spark is more or less open source AI modules for the public administration. And I looked at the tech stack. It's a microservices-based stack. And the common denominator is exactly Kubernetes and an AI infrastructure that can be accessible via proxy, right? Everything else on top, the microservices, databases, S3, and so on, they kind of bring themselves. And that is exactly what we're doing. We're basically converging towards an operational, ready cloud-native stack based on Kubernetes. And we're going to fill in the gaps, and you can buy the stack from many, many vendors. But it's all going to be the same so that initiatives like Spark can roam the continuum regardless which vendor. That is our strategic path as mentioned in the triangles. I'll do a last one. I'll let you go with one idea in mind, right? So we think about interoperability and sometimes electricity and utility comes to mind, right? And then we say, all right, we always think about providers that basically provide us with the electricity at 240 volts and 50 hertz, right? That's how we think. And then we have all the ecosystem like iron and microwaves and whatever, they can just plug in. Software and what we're building also in NeoNephos is different, because what we want is that the ecosystem actually gets back into that, we have this self-fulfilling virtuous cycle, and that is the picture. That's exactly what we're building. And there you can also see a couple of nuances of differences, how we utilize Kubernetes all the way down and all the way up. That's I think, from a technical perspective, the difference that we're trying to make. And obviously, yeah, you need some energy. It's not going, you can't, it doesn't work. All right.
So yeah, I like this final metaphor. And again, thank